Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 95 for Friday, October 25th, 2024. My name is Justin Young, and joining me, as always, are Alicia Utecht, Christina Ivey, and Mario Sanders. How's everyone doing?
Yeah.
Man, you really sold that one.
It's that time of the semester.
No, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
It's that time of the semester.
Well, Christina, I know that you at least had a fun adventure last week. You went to Kansas City?
Yes, and it was in Excelsior Springs, Missouri, so right outside of Kansas City. And we stayed in the Elms, which is, I did not realize, haunted. And they have a tour that they do once a week that's of the entire 5th floor, because apparently that's where all the ghosts live. And then
that's awfully nice of them.
Right?
So they all congregate on one floor.
But one of the people I was traveling with refused to walk by herself, out of the hotel at night. And then
I like how you're trying to protect the innocent. I've changed the names.
Dr. Bhatti. And also, I got her to watch the Golden Girls while we were there. So we were watching an episode of Golden Girls, as you do. I'm being a good friend here.
I'm really interested where this connection is coming in.
It just, the lights went out for a while.
Did the ghost of B. Arthur show up?
The whole time she was like, that's a woman, right? And I was like, yes.
B. Arthur?
I was like, that is a woman, and has been a woman. And I showed her
That's Maud.
Right, that's what I showed her.
Put respect on that name.
Exactly. I was like, she's had that voice for her life. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. I got to talk actually about pop culture and pedagogy. So I talked about the Brat Summer of Music and how they can inspire us to be brats in the classroom. It's a lot better than it sounds, I promise.
I mean, it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's neat. Alicia, Mario, do anything fun, exciting?
I went to a performance festival.
That's right. Yeah.
It's the Pedagene Performance Festival, because it's always at Pedagene State Park in Arkansas. So that was good. It was nice to get to hang out with, a whole bunch of performance studies people, and to just kind of get away for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And did you do part of your show as there?
I did not this year. Last year we brought a show, so this year we were like, we're gonna let other people bring shows.
Okay, that's cool.
But it was a good time. I'm glad that I went, and I'm like, dang, I could have used those 4 days to just rest.
Right. That's always the problem.
Yeah, but it was good. I enjoy it. This is only my second year going, but it's very much like it's tradition for a lot of people who are there. So it's that time that everybody gets to get together and see their friends and whatever. So that's always nice.
Mario, how about you? Anything interesting?
Not really. We had a few days off, Thursday and Friday of last week, and I just kind of chilled. Didn't really do anything all that special.
Good for you.
Nothing that I wouldn't have done on any other random weekend.
Well, you spent the previous couple weekends at wrestling shows, so
that is true.
You had been very busy.
Essentially 3 weeks of Raw in a row, and then the local one that was in Murfreesboro.
Yeah, how was that show in Murfreesboro?
It was fun. It was some very cool things. It's interesting to see the performance aspect of wrestling on such a small scale,
right?
As compared to obviously the spectacle of WWE or AEW,
where you're not in an arena, you're in
it was like the
VFW or something,
the youth center or something like that, the community rec center.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting to see it in such a small scale, but it was fun.
I make a lot of comparisons between wrestling and drag, and I feel like this is another place where it would be similar, where I've been to shows where like RuPaul's girls are there, in big auditoriums and stuff, and those are great, those are fun. But I also really love local drag.
Yeah.
To see even the ones that maybe aren't as cute, aren't as well polished or whatever, but they still like get out there and just do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's different and also fun in different ways.
Yeah, I want to say they announced their next show is like November 15th or 16th, whatever that weekend is. I'm gone, so I can't go, but I want to say it's like their 1-year anniversary show or something
wow.
like that. It was some like significant milestone or something like that. But yeah, so I'll be gone, so I can't go on that weekend. But it's one that I think I followed them on Facebook, so it looks like they do one show a month, and so
cool.
I'll go, and it's like $10 for a ticket, and so
one pay-per-view a month, just like the WWE.
Exactly.
I feel like as a non-fan of professional wrestling, like, I've never watched WWE, I've never watched Raw, but like, I would be willing to go check out something local like this where it wouldn't be so overwhelming. I feel like.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's hard is it's interesting because even though it's so small, they're all still like working their little storylines. And so like going into WWE, any major show, like you have to figure out the storylines, you have to figure out the characters and their interactions with one another. And so coming into this, knowing literally nothing, and it's near impossible to do any research on who these people are and what their storylines are, like figuring out like, oh, this is the face and this is the heel and this is their relationship and this is how things have been going. And so that was an interesting part of it as well.
So being from the San Francisco area, have you ever been to Hood Slam?
No.
Okay. So it's apparently pretty crazy from what I've heard. So
Not familiar.
Oh, okay. Apparently it has a lot of like copyright infringement going on, like people dressed up as Mario and Luigi fighting each other and like that kind of over the top stuff. I don't know if it's still going on, but like a few years ago, I know it was a pretty big deal like in the area.
Every time I think of like local wrestling, I think about that episode from It's Always Sunny where they like, do y'all watch that at all? Okay.
I have. I feel like I can picture what you're talking about.
Danny DeVito is the trash man.
Frank has the Andre, the giant singlet.
Yeah. And he just like throws trash on people, and spoilers. You're probably not gonna watch this. He ends up winning, and it's not deserved.
That sounds right for wrestling.
Yeah.
I will say the best thing about that local show is there was this young girl there who was so into it.
Yeah.
She was yelling at the wrestlers. She was like cheering for the good guys and booing the bad guys, and she was getting in their faces and yelling and screaming. It was so much fun to watch her in addition to like the wrestlers that were actually doing their performance.
I love that.
That is fun because like little kids, they're buying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was like getting her arm signed by all the wrestlers afterwards. It was great.
Oh
That's nice.
That's awesome.
And I'm sure that also like for the wrestlers made them,
sure.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll sign your arm.
Well, it's like anything performance-wise. Like if somebody cares
Yes.
at all, like if you feel like there's somebody who cares at all a little, it elevates what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I went to St. Louis this weekend and saw a concert, a Grateful Dead cover band. So that tells you like how old I am. Going to see Grateful Dead cover bands. And my favorite thing about going to see like a little show like this that's in basically a bar / club is that like there's always like that one dude who's just really into it and like just dancing, but like he doesn't know how to dance. And so he's like just running in place at one point. And you're just like kind of looking on, you're like, no, he's not doing the running, man. He's just running in place like you did in gym class. And, then at one point he's just like spinning around in circles and you're just like, he's almost more entertaining than what's going on stage.
Those
like,
are some good drugs.
and then there's a guy who like makes his way to the front, like right in front of the stage, and then just turns around and faces everyone else. and starts dancing, like just staring at everybody in the eyes. And you're like, what are you doing? You're not the show.
I'm glad y'all like the warm-up band. Here I am.
Like, they're the orchestra accompanying me. I am doing my ballet now. Please enjoy.
Can you imagine ballet to the Grateful Dead?
I was about to say, I would go to a Grateful Dead ballet, honestly.
Like, I would not be shocked if that hasn't happened already. So, like, that's fun. And then the other thing is we went to a barcade called the Up Down, which is that the one you were talking about at one point?
No, I've never been to one in St. Louis.
Okay.
I've been to a couple others. I went to one in Kansas City, and been to one in Boise, but haven't been to
I feel like you were talking about one on the podcast one week, but maybe...
Oh, that might have been when I went home for my cousin's wedding.
Okay,
there was
maybe
like
that's
an
what I was thinking
arcade museum that was in
I remember you
Santa
talking about
Cruz.
this.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Monterey, excuse me.
So anyways, this place in St. Louis is really cool. It's called the Up Down, which I assume is a reference to the Konami code. But
Yeah.
I mean, they were showing WCW as well.
Right. So like you walk into this place and you do have to be 21. So it's a bar, but like the bar is sort of like over on a wall and like people are getting drinks, but like it's not the feature there. The games are the feature. And they have a pretty impressive little arcade in there. Like it's 2 stories. Like
Oh, cool.
it's the first floor and then a basement.
Dang.
And then there's like games like every nook and cranny. Like you're like walking through there and you're like, oh, well, there's a staircase here, and I go to the top of this staircase, and around this corner there's just a Galaxian machine sitting there for some reason. So they have all that, and then they have a projector and a projector set up with an N64 connected to it.
Ah, nice.
And they have a list of games that are behind the bar you can go ask them for.
That's how the one in Boise is. But they have an N64, a Super Nintendo, an original like SNES. But yeah, that's really cool.
And then, the picture I took and sent in the chat was they had a bunch of fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Tekken and stuff. And then above them, projected up on a wall, they were showing like WCW matches, just like on a constant loop of WCW. So like we were there a few hours and like, I don't know how many like matches they showed during that time. There was a Hulk Hogan Ric Flair match going on at one point. I think that's the picture I sent because you identified it immediately. And I was like, yeah, that's a wrestling fanatic. Because I feel like Hogan's instantly easily, but I don't think he even showed Flair's like face. It was just from his hair and trunks. You were like, yeah, that's Ric Flair. So they have that. And then like they have pizza by the slice that they're selling. And then they have a little kind of outdoor patio area where they had like Jumbo Connect 4 set up. They had little tables there. So it's really cool. And the really cool thing about it was like everything only costs 1 token.
Oh, nice.
And they had a deal where you got double the tokens. So instead of $10 worth of tokens, you got $20 worth of tokens. And so everything, they had like Dance Dance Revolution and they had all these games and all of them were 1 token to play.
Oh, wow.
So field trip?
Right.
Hey, I mean, I would go back in an instant. Like it was one of the best one of those I've ever been to.
Nice.
That's cool.
And so if you're in St. Louis, that's a really cool place to hit up. And then the other thing is that we went to the big haunted house in St. Louis, which is called The Darkness, which is apparently rated by USA Today as the best haunted house in America.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that either.
And this place takes you 30 minutes to get through. And it is like Disney level quality as far as like the attractions as you go through each room. So each room is like themed like we're under the sea and here's octopus arms like hanging down from the ceiling, and you walk into the next room and it's like an old creepy library and they have like books on all the shelves and everything, and there's things like bursting out through them. Like it looks like they spent millions of dollars building this.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's amazing. Like, we were just walking through, like, laughing the entire time and taking pictures of each room because we were like, this is amazing. And so the people, are trying to scare you, but, like, we're just completely... Yeah, we're
Take a picture.
we're completely ignoring. At one point, some guy like gets right up in my face, and I'm like, "Dude, like I don't care. Like you're not scaring me." But I was with my brother, and there was a couple behind him, and the woman in that couple was the entire time as like flat against his back, like pushed up against my brother because she was so terrified, and my brother's like, can you back off? Like you have like your boyfriend or husband or whatever he is. Like, why are you pressed up against me? This is really awkward.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really cool. That's the like completely worth going to see. Like I was amazed at like how like elaborate that was.
So that's really funny because I think you had shared in our group chat that you had gone to a concert and then you had said something about the darkness, and Maya was like, "Oh yeah, I believe in a thing called love too."
Yeah.
Did not know that this was a completely separate thing.
Yeah. Yes, I suppose that was confusing messages, right?
Well, I mean,
It was
maybe
also
I just
not-
didn't read it very well, but
I was also not going to play the PlayStation 3 game. But yeah, so I didn't play a whole lot of video games because, well, I played video games there. So
I was gonna
guess that's
say.
not. But anyways, let's move on to what we've been playing. So Alicia, what have you been playing?
So I started the first Ace Attorney Investigations game. I'm partway through Case 4 right now.
this is investigation. Is that what you just said?
Yeah,
This is the new one that just released.
this is that they just released the remaster duology, and the second game, it's the first time that's gotten an official English release in the 15 years since it came out.
Right.
But the first one, you can really tell like when they first came up with the idea for this game, it wasn't going to be Miles Edgeworth. It was going to be Emma Skye, who shows up in the bonus chapter of the first game, and then she's in the Apollo Justice trilogy. And you can really tell in this first game that it was not supposed to be Miles Edgeworth. Like, it's fine, but it's not anywhere near the level of the other Ace Attorney games. And from what I've heard, Game 2 is much more of a Miles Edgeworth game. But like the thing is, you're like not ever in court. You're just going around the places doing investigations, and then you're like bickering with people, and it treats it like the testimonies in court. But I'm like, this is fine. But I will say Case 4...
Because it's not a graphic novel like the other games, right? Or like it's much more of kind of an adventure game moving around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more adventure game than visual novel for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's just fine. Like I'm playing through it to get to the second game because I know the second game is much better but it is nice. I do love Kay Faraday. She is, and because the other thing is, having read fanfics, I know these characters even though I haven't played these games yet. So I'm now getting the context on these characters. And so like getting to meet Kay, getting to have more of Detective Gumshoe. My gosh, I miss Gumshoe. Let him out of the basement, Capcom. Let him back into a mainline game. And then Case 4 is, and I was talking with my sister about this because, she's watched playthroughs of both investigation games. And she was like, yeah, Case 4 is the one that really, it matters that it's Miles Edgeworth. And it's like, oh yeah, it is. It's like it's a flashback case, so you're getting Manfred von Karma, and you get little Franziska von Karma, which just makes my heart so happy because I love her so much. But yeah, I said partway through Case 4. I believe there's 5 cases, so looking forward to finishing this game and getting on to the second one.
All right. Well, that's disappointing, but hopefully the second one is an improvement.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Other than that, I did buy Super Mario Party Jamboree. So I haven't played a ton of that. I played through one board, and I'm like halfway through another board right now. And it's just fun, you know. I haven't had any of the Mario Party games since 8, and so like just getting to do that, and then, you know, I haven't jumped onto online play yet because I want to play through all the boards with CPUs before I play with other people who've been playing for 4 days or whatever and know them at this point. But it's just really fun having a Mario Party game again.
I watched, that's what I wrote down. I watched somebody play through that. One of the boards is the Rainbow Galleria, and so it's like a 3-story mall. Yeah. It looks like it went back to like, I was like huge fan of like original Mario parties. Like I had Mario Party 2 that my sister and I played over and over and over. And so I really like how they've kind of gone back to like a lot of the, I don't know, the original stuff for it in this game. It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, and I've played Superstars, you know, hanging out with other people. And there was something about Superstars that just didn't feel as fun.
Do you mean Superstars or Super Mario Party? Super Mario Party is the one that was all new stuff. Superstars is like a best of collection. It's like taken from Mario Party 1, 2, and 3, like mini games and boards.
I don't know.
That's okay.
I remember some of the mini games I recognized from 8, but I don't think the board was a throwback board.
Okay.
Yeah, the last one that I played was the one for Wii U where it was like Bowser versus everybody else, and it just wasn't balanced very well. Like whoever played Bowser was going to win.
Yeah.
Is that the one where you're in cars? You're all in a car together?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
They got really weird with like trying to mix up the formula.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so the Jamboree is a lot of fun. I'm excited to play more of it. That's probably what I'm going to do tonight is like finish playing through as many boards as I can. Because it's just delightful.
All right. Christina, what have you been playing?
So I've watched mostly. I watched Mario Party, Jamboree, and then I also watched the same streamer play this game called Liar's Bar, which is up on stream. And essentially you're an avatar of like anthropomorphic like animal. And you're playing with 3 other people, and you each get cards dealt to you, and the cards are either there's 6 aces, 6 kings, 6 queens, 2 jokers. And each round is a different hand. So like a queen's round, for example, you're only supposed to play queens. And you lay down, and jokers can be whatever. You lay down whatever the cards are, but of course you can lie and say, oh, say I laid down a king instead of a queen. Alicia, who would be next, could, be like, I don't think you have a queen, and call liar. If she calls liar and I have lied, then they all have guns. And it's like a Russian roulette after that. But if you called liar and I wasn't lying, then you take the turn. So in the line of the games that I've talked about that I'm like, whoa, what was the developer thinking? This would fit into that. It looked really fun.
It sounds like Russian roulette meets spades.
A little bit, yeah. Except you're not in teams, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like coup.
Possibly, yeah. There's also, so they have the cards and then they have the dice, which is a little more complicated because with that, you shake up your dice, you look at your dice, and you're trying to guess how many of each die. So like, I think that there are 4 6s, right? And again, if someone calls liar and there's not at least 4, then you have to, for that one, you don't shoot a gun, you drink poison.
Okay.
It's very unusual, but definitely.
So Russian roulette meets Yahtzee?
That's that one. Yep. It's a weird game, but honestly, it felt like a kind of game that I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of game I would talk about on the podcast. It's on Steam. It looks interesting. Yeah. And the only one that I actually downloaded a game to play, I haven't played it yet because I'm having like a Halloween thing at my house on Saturday, is the Jackbox Naughty Pack. So I'm excited to play that.
All right. Mario.
I think since the last time played a lot more UFO 50. I think I'm up through like 14 of the games. I've just been going through them in order. This next one might have to be like the first real skip. It's a puzzle game, and I don't think my brain is big enough to figure out these puzzles. But there's some really cool ones, and the one that is probably my favorite that I've played thus far. It's interesting to see like the inspirations of real games and where there's like some slight mixes. There's a group on Reddit right now that's going through each of the games and saying like what is a real game that's like most similar to this one. And so, the one that I would put at the top of my list right now that I've played thus far is a game called Mortal. And it's basically if Lemmings was a platformer where you've got all these people, you control one at a time, but you have like 3 different rituals that using these rituals create platforms for you to like go on. So there's like a wall that's really high. You can like create blocks to like get up the wall. You can create like little platforms by using them. And so you're given so many lives of the characters you have as you like move through the game. And so there's like some Lemming stuff, like I said, with like this platforming. So you see some really cool things. Another thing that's really interesting is you've got games of genres that didn't exist like back then. So one of them is pretty much a deck builder. That was not really a thing for the NES era. But so you're seeing like how these genres would be implemented at that period of time, which is pretty cool. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's a game I would recommend to a lot of people. I'm not all 50 of the games are going to be bangers, but I'm pretty happy with most of them that I've played thus far. And I mean, games that I have seen but haven't played that I'm looking forward to. So I played a lot of that. And then the other thing that I played was Castlevania 64, which I have to say, that game has a lot of haters, and I am not one of them. That's a good video game. I don't care what people say.
Are you playing Castlevania 64 or the
Legacy of Darkness?
Okay.
The Castlevania 64. Like I said, that game has a lot of haters for some reason, but that's a good video game. That game is a ton of fun. It's got its rough edges. Your biggest enemy in that game is not Dracula. It is the camera, as is many N64 games
from that era. Yep.
It's not the Frankenstein with chainsaw arms.
Nope. Yeah, it is. The camera is rough in that game, but I think that is a game where I could feel like people who played it when it first came out were disappointed because this isn't Castlevania as I know and love it, but they were also like figuring out how do we turn this property into 3D. And I think they did a pretty decent job. I feel like if you playing it now, I feel like people would respond to it more positively than maybe they did back then.
I feel like there's been a sort of reevaluation of that game in recent years, that you hear a lot more people going back to that game and going, oh, wait, like I judged this game unfairly at the time. I think you're right that a lot of people were wanting the next Castlevania, and that game was such a departure. It wasn't just taking Castlevania into 3D in the way that people maybe wanted or expected it to be. And then particularly the like sort of follow-up, which was like, it has a sordid history because it was like some of that is basically cut content from the original game. And, so it's sort of an expansion of the original game, but also as a separate game, really.
Yeah, I have not played that one, so I cannot speak to Legacy of Darkness.
I know a lot of people speak really highly of that one, even more than 64.
Yeah, and part of me wonders, I don't know which one would have come first in terms of Castlevania 64 or Symphony of the Night. Like, I could certainly see where
64 came first.
Oh, okay. Where like people would be disappointed
I'm
if
fairly
they played
certain.
Symphony of the Night, and then they were like, Castlevania 64 is not that. But yeah, people of the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 generation, both consoles got good Castlevania games.
Yeah. I played Castlevania 64. I remember renting it at the time and being like, oh, this is not what I was expecting this game to be. And I've just never gone back and given it another shot. So I should. Maybe that'll be your recommendation will be motivation for me to go back and finally give it more time.
And I'm not going to say, again, it's not the perfect game. It does things that I think are decisions. But, like I said, I feel like the majority from what I've heard of other people is that this is some like just terrible video game. And I would strongly disagree with that statement. So I think it's very fun.
Maybe someday there will be a critical reevaluation of the Gollum game.
Maybe. Who knows?
I don't actually think that'll happen.
I did watch a really good video essay about the potential of the Gollum game. So,
in 20 years, when we're on episode like 500, we'll replay that game.
We'll play it. Yeah. I don't think any of us played it.
I've played it. Some of it. I didn't finish it, but I've played it.
I knew you bought it. I didn't know if you'd played it.
Well,
Christina's just shaking her head at Mario right now.
No.
It wasn't a good sign that like I clipped through the wall less than 10 minutes into the gameplay. But I do also think that
that's
game
a speedrunning strat.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
I do think that game was also judged more harshly. I think that game is better than like people talking about it as like this is one of the worst games of all time.
Right.
I don't think it's that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a common problem. Like anytime something becomes the worst of all time, the worst movie, the worst game, like it almost always is never actually the case. It is the one that was big enough and had enough hype for people to have that sort of a blowback against it.
If that were not a Lord of the Rings game, people would probably be like, it's a little broken, but I wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, the fact that it's a Lord of the Rings game is really
so you get people that probably don't play a whole lot of video games getting it and maybe judging it too.
I don't know it's that. I think you just have people with very high expectations. That's a fan base that holds that franchise very dearly, and anything that is a departure or like starts to take away from that name is going to be judged very, very harshly. And again, it's not a good game by no means, but I do think that there's parts of it that are quite fun. And if you were just some random little dude running around that wasn't Gollum, it'd probably be judged more fairly.
And I think part of the problem too was like the Lord of the Rings fans were upset at even conceptually, like the story and idea of the game.
I think there was a lot of skepticism before anything with that game ever came out. Just the thought of the game itself.
It's me. I was the skeptic.
I was going to say, I don't know why we're speaking as though there's some abstract or we have a representative here.
I mean, but yes, Alicia, but like there were people.
Yes, of course.
There was I think a broad audience that was like before that game. Like I remember when that game first got shown, like the first time it got announced and they showed a trailer and people were like, oh my God, that game looks horrible. What are they doing? And I was like, what are you flipping out about? It doesn't look that bad. And I think it was, that became the story of that game.
Yeah. And I feel like the response was who asked for this.
Right.
And that
which is fair.
I think that is fair, but I think that is where like I said, you see some of those expectations from this very devout fan base.
Yeah.
But that's about it for me.
So I was traveling. I didn't play a lot. I did play quite a bit at the arcade. So, but it's mostly stuff like that you have played before, or at least I've played before. So I think the thing that's kind of neat, every time I go into an arcade now, I'm very much kind of the mindset and thinking, what do we lose in the process of not playing this on the original hardware and playing it in emulation or something, right? So one of the things I played was Punch-Out, the arcade version of Punch-Out, which originally has two stacked monitors on top of one another, right? And when you play that on a computer, right? Like I suppose you could turn your monitor vertically, and like play it that way. But like you do lose that element. And so like one of the things they had there was an Akari Warriors, arcade machine. And I think the thing that's kind of interesting to go back and play that game is the controller is so weird. So like that game, in order to turn your character, you're not using a dual joystick setup. You have a joystick that moves you left and right, but then like you can change your aiming by like twisting the joystick. And so like it like has this like extra degree of movement that a joystick normally doesn't have. And like you lose that, right? Like that game was one of the things with that game before we had dual joystick controllers. That was a very difficult game to port to a home console because you missed out on that. So you had to change the control scheme on the NES. That game is like, you fire wherever you are aimed at and everything. And so like there's no independent moving and firing in a different direction. And so for me, that's what's really cool about going into an arcade now is that like there is that preservation. And so that matters to me. I don't know how much it matters to anyone else. The other thing that was pretty cool about that place is they actually had a Killer Queen set up. So Killer Queen was a game developed just a few years ago. I feel like right before the pandemic.
So not the Queen song?
Well, I think that's where they're taking the name from, but like no, they do not have the rights to the song because it was this really like low budget game. But so it has two machines back to back, and you're playing like 6 players on each side, and you're playing competitively 2 teams of like 6. I think it's 6, maybe more than that. And there's very few of those machines like anywhere in the country because it was this real small team that made this and sold it to arcades. So I think you find them sometimes in like Dave & Buster's and places like that. But there's just really not a whole lot of those. And for them to have a setup of that was really cool. So like stuff like that you just can't really replicate any other way, I think is always neat. The other thing that I played was, speaking of Jackbox, I did not play the naughty Jackbox. I didn't realize that had come out. But I did play the Jackbox Survey Scramble. So this is a Jackbox game that is basically trying to do Family Feud. So like it has multiple different kind of like variations of the game that you can play. So it's not a full party pack. It's just this game with multiple variations. And it has an online database that is constantly being updated with like your answers. So like when you give answers, that updates the database. It's my understanding of how it works. But like they'll ask you questions like, what are the most popular terms used that somebody would use to describe their dad? Right? So like, and it has several hundred answers, but like, what is the most popular term somebody would use to describe their dad? So you might say like kind or like smart or caring or, these sorts of terms. Those are going to be like your kind of like top 10. And so like the first 2 rounds, it's like, okay, give us like, what is the top term somebody would use? And then you're trying to do that for 2 rounds. And then it becomes, okay, pick the least popular answers. And then so you're trying to guess what were the terms that almost nobody would use to describe their dad. And so, you're trying to think like, okay, what's a term I would never use to describe my dad? And so when it came up, I used the term sexy because I was like, who's going to call their own dad sexy? But that was like the number 60 best answer. So apparently a lot of people would use that term to describe their dad,
They got confused. They thought it said daddy.
I was thinking that's like the number 200 answer or something. But like then that becomes like really sad because you have people putting in stuff like abusive or something.
Oh, shit.
And you're like that's the number 80 popular answer, and you're like, oh no, like. Yeah, so but it's a really neat game. Like I mean, it's I think the fact that it's constantly updated makes it like really kind of neat, because you can start seeing, well, we play it this week, and in a month from now, even if we get the same prompt, that prompt may have different answers.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So I think that's a really neat, approach to the sort of games that they make.
I still think it was egregious that, like, what was the first one we did? We played this in class, and like animals you could take in 1-to-1 combat.
Oh, right, yeah.
And tiger was like number 40 of like 400. Like,
No.
who?
Ooh.
Yeah. I think was that my answer?
I think that was your answer.
Yeah, and it was like the number like 40 answer, and I was like, who
Like right
are
above
these?
parrot.
Yeah, like, who are these people who think they can take on a tiger?
Yeah.
Like, what are these nuts? Or that one was really disturbing, because like the answers were not at all what you
That one was,
ordered anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know sometimes if people are getting confused and giving their answers, like who knows, but it's a cool game. I mean, it's a different take on those Jackbox games. I think they need to do that now, because they put out 10 packs. I think doing a dirty, naughty pack is a way to do that.
Yeah.
But to see them kind of, mixing up the way that they do those.
For sure. Because, like sometimes the prompts, I already make it a naughty pack.
Right.
But these like have prompts that even push you to give certain answers.
I feel like you play that game long enough, you play that game with some drinks, and like it gets pretty raunchy pretty quick.
Exactly. Or at least like just inappropriate, if not naughty.
Right. All right, let's move on to news. And I think the biggest news of the last couple of weeks, we talked about this, I feel like the last podcast we did, that Nintendo had put out this play test you could sign up for, and nobody knew what it was, and there was lots of discussion, and we talked about it on the podcast. I think that was Mario, you and me with Scott. And we talked about that one of the big rumors was this might be GameCube emulation. That seemed to make a lot of sense to a lot of people. And the truth is even more bizarre than anyone could have guessed, which is that Nintendo is apparently testing an MMO. A Nintendo MMO, not like they're bringing World of Warcraft to the Switch or something. This is a Nintendo-developed MMO. This is apparently by the same team who did Ring Fit Adventure and did Labo. So a team that has done really weird stuff for Nintendo over the last console generation. I think was it EPD4, I think is the team's name. But anyways, so Nintendo still is asking people not to leak any information, but almost instantly people were putting screenshots and stuff online. Apparently some people have streamed this. But it is an MMO where you are on a large shared planet and you are trying to activate beacons. And the higher a beacon you activate, the larger area it will cover. And you activate the beacons by accomplishing different tasks. And the whole game has a sort of very simplistic, almost like Minecraft look to it. Your characters look like very simplistic, like little caveman type guys. So they're not like any Mario or Nintendo IP. This seems to be entirely new characters in a new world that you're interacting with. But yeah, Nintendo is making an MMO, testing an MMO, a massively multiplayer online game. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think about this?
Well, it's interesting just because the way that you describe it isn't the way that I would. That sounds more like a MOBA, like a Dota. If it's a competitive, I feel like I'm seeing it as more of a competitive thing.
It's apparently cooperative. You are working with other players.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to turn on these beacons around the entire world collectively. So it's almost more like the Peter Molyneux game he made that was a giant cube that you were trying to like poke away at, and like everybody was poking away at the same cube. It's apparently much more akin to that.
Okay.
Do we know why we're lighting these beacons?
To enlighten the world. Beacons of hope. I don't know. This is what I have gleaned from what I've read. I have
Yeah.
not actually seen live gameplay of this yet.
It sounds interesting. I mean, I'm not much of an MMO gamer. I'll look at it when it, whenever it does come out. If it does come out, I'll be interested. I'll probably watch people play it. I don't know if I would play it, but it sounds interesting. And like I said, my default would be as a competitive play, but I think making it more cooperative is definitely a intriguing avenue. So yeah, I'll be interested in it.
That feels very Nintendo.
That's what I was
Absolutely.
about
Yeah,
to
for
say.
sure.
Yep.
Because I think I was like, oh, this sounds not the same as Splatoon, but a similar sort of like if there's different types of beacons and like you're covering so much of like that is essentially what Splatoon is in many ways. Yeah, interesting. Not what I would expect, but that's
Same.
cool.
Yeah. So this is Nintendo, like, very closely 2 times in a row where they have swerved. They've zigged when everybody expected them to zag. So, like, the Alarmo
Oh, yeah.
being announced, the alarm clock, where, nobody knew what that thing was, but the last thing anyone was expecting was an alarm clock. And then they announced this playtest, and people had lots of different theories about what it might be. But I think the last thing anybody expected Nintendo, of all people, to be working on was an MMO. That's an entirely, original IP. And, like, again, right? Like, this is Nintendo being Nintendo at their best, like, as weird as Nintendo gets. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that it's not GameCube emulation, but I think similarly to Mario, I probably won't play it just because that's not my type of game, but I'm excited to see other people play it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, most of these games are other people I know playing it. I'll play with other people if they're playing it, but that's not one that I would just sort of join on my own.
Yeah.
But I think to get to your point, Justin, I think, and my hope, at least my like excitement around Nintendo doing something weird, is that even if it's a flop, it like is something they continue to build on and like
Yeah.
Right.
hopefully master somewhere down the line if they give it a second shot. It seems like Nintendo does that pretty well. I don't know if there's too many things that they just like outright give up on. It definitely does happen, but failures typically turn into something down the line, it seems like, with Nintendo.
Yeah, and we should note this is a test. So this could be them testing like the infrastructure of like how does this work and everything. And the final game may look entirely different.
Yeah.
They could slap an IP over this before the game actually gets released, and you could be playing as Mario characters or Animal Crossing characters.
I was about to say that also feels like something very Nintendo, that they're going to hide what it is they're really doing and just testing the mechanics of it.
Yeah, I mean, like it's hard to know. Like Nintendo.
Honestly, Animal Crossing, what you just said sounds like it. Like, because I was thinking, what made the Switch such a big deal, especially during the pandemic, was Animal Crossing coming out. Like, it's a game I never thought I would have picked up, but because of the pandemic, I did. And so knowing that is somewhere where they can make a lot of money and needing to, like, change it, because it feels, I still pick up my old Animal Crossing and play occasionally. That wouldn't make a lot of sense for it to be an MMO.
And in Animal Crossing, like there's already maybe not MMO qualities, but you figure with like the prices of the commodities or whatever on different people's islands, like there was that engagement with different people.
Visiting other people's islands.
Yeah.
Like my ex, like we and I played it a lot. They were a part of a Facebook group where these folks who like analyzed like New York stock market stuff for fun, analyzed the same kind of mathematics. I don't know, it was a lot of math for like when certain like when turnips would be like your probability of having a high day or whatever,
Right.
and then would post about it so that people could go sell theirs and make a bunch of money.
Trying to crack the algorithm.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
even just thinking about how long Animal Crossing has encouraged that, like okay, go to your friend's town and pick up, if you have apples and they have oranges, bring back an orange.
Yep.
And
Right.
Well, that was the thing, when lots of my friends like would get the game, I would come to their thing and like my presents would be like, oh, here's a ladder that you actually will have to work a long time for, but you don't have to, and here's my fruit and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think also that's a really good point, Christina, about the pandemic and how the pandemic really made Animal Crossing take off in a way that it never has before. That's always been a successful franchise.
Yeah.
But I think it sold like over 40 million copies at this point on the Switch. I think it's only outsold by Mario Kart.
Right.
And I think you sort of look at this and go, oh, did Nintendo look at that and look at the style of gameplay and look at the online features as limited as they were in that? And is that when, we start looking at the pandemic and work our way back? So 4 years later, we're hearing about this game, right? So like, let's say early 2001, did Nintendo say, hey, we need to make more games that take advantage of connecting people like over a distance and everything, and we need to have more games of this style, and this is the outcome of that.
That can have easy little things to accomplish, like you set off a beacon and all of a sudden you can reach more people.
Right.
And in a way that is primarily cooperative as well.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's what I look at this as, and so I'm excited to see it. Like, again, I'm sort of the same mindset of like, I don't know, this is a game that I'll get really into, but I'm glad to see Nintendo still taking these big swings.
Yeah.
Like they do this with their franchises. Like, Nintendo mixes things up and like, hey, we're going to make a completely new style of Zelda game. And that's really cool. It's cool to see them still trying new IP like this. Let's see. EA Sports College Football 25 is now the best-selling football game of all time in terms of revenue, second only in revenue of all sports games to NBA 2K1. This is like, we talked about this earlier this year, like what would be the reception for this game, like how much hype and buildup was there for it, and apparently it had all the hype.
Yeah.
Like people were excited, people were waiting for this game, and like this has paid off huge.
People love college football. Like I know that obviously professional football has a huge following, but like I don't like necessarily watching professional ball, but I like college football. So it's it doesn't surprise me that it's this successful.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the situation here, is that you have a lot of people picking up this game who are maybe picking it up more as like hey, it'd be really cool to play SIU, right? Like I'm not a fanatic about football, but wouldn't that be cool to play my school in a game? And, like how long has it been? It's been over a decade since people have been able to do that in a sports game. And so, there's almost an entire generation that's built up like anticipation for this. But like good for them. I guess I would say, I hope if they're making that much money, that maybe the amount they pay the players for the next edition could
That's
be
exactly what I was thinking.
a little more. Let's see. Meanwhile, also with EA Sports, their FC, that's their new title for the FIFA games, so Football Club. FC 25 has the biggest launch month ever for a soccer game.
Dang.
So, yeah, I mean, there's more people playing video games now than ever before. But I think this sort of counteracts the argument a lot of people made that losing the FIFA branding would hurt them in some way. Yeah. It apparently has not hurt them in any way at all. So people are still buying those games in droves. Let's see. Yooka is getting a remaster called Yooka Replayly, which is, I don't know if that's a genius name or
it fits so well, I think, to me, because it was Yooka was supposed to be like the new Banjo-Kazooie.
Right.
And like the second one of those was like Banjo-Tooie.
Right.
So it fits very well with what it's supposed to be doing, I think.
I don't know this game, but I love this name.
So this is some of the development team that did Banjo-Kazooie, made Ukulele. So this remaster is coming to the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, and in their words, quote, Nintendo platforms, unquote. And so the image I sent to the group chat was the announcement image that they put out. And they have the PlayStation 5 logo and the Xbox Series S and X logo. And they do not have the Switch logo. They just have a Nintendo logo with like little suspicious eyes over it. The little eyes, you know, like the emoji looking to the side eyes. And so I do like their very sort of like cheeky way of presenting this. Like, yes, this is coming to whatever
the new console.
the Switch successor is where this is coming. So that's fun to see them do that. Let's see. Analysts have predicted that Black Ops 6, the new Call of Duty game, which I guess came out today, could lead to 2.5 to 4 million new Game Pass subscribers. Wow. So this has kind of always been the big bet with buying Activision, is that Call of Duty would be a way to drive more people subscribing to Game Pass. This seems like if you are a Call of Duty player, right, like subscribing to a year of Game Pass to play this game and then get the new game the following year seems to make a whole lot of sense. So it'll be interesting to see like how successful that ends up being for them. Xbox has been struggling a lot lately, so this might be some actually good news this year for the Xbox team. Ubisoft has started a quote exploration phase on the Rayman brand.
What does that mean?
Okay.
I think it means that they are starting to think of ways we could do something with the Rayman franchise, which they have not done anything with since like the Rayman Legends and whatever that other game that followed that up.
Origins?
Origins, yeah, I think that's it. I think Origins was first and then Legends. Maybe that's how it worked. But anyways, they have not done anything with that franchise since then, I don't think. I think those were the last games. So I think they're announcing, hey, we're going to start thinking and exploring and like brainstorming, maybe doing something new with this character in this universe.
I was gonna say, are the Rabbids like completely separate? I know they've been mixed before, but
they came from the Rayman games.
I know they did the Mario
Yeah.
with Rabbids games, but that's about it.
I think they did separate them kind of at one point.
Yeah,
but
they did. They had their own game.
Right.
Yeah.
They had those like party games
Raving
and stuff.
Rabbids. Yeah, I really like that game.
So my thing is, I'm mad that the Rabbids predate the Minions and they have the same shtick.
They really do.
And the Rabbids don't get any of the credit for
Right?
it.
Because I thought the Rabbids were like, I really liked them. They were like, yeah. That game, I played that game a lot. Mainly because they were just so gosh darn cute.
Now, do you like the Minions?
No.
See?
They annoy me.
Rabbits are better. Actually, that does really annoy me. Every time somebody talks about the Minions or I hear them, I'm like, they're just doing the rabbit thing. Like, somebody very clearly copied that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it sounds like they're going to make a new Rayman game, maybe, or at least thinking about how they can make a new Rayman game. I like Rayman as a character. The original Rayman's a really good game. Rayman 2 was like one of the best early 3D platformers. Those Origins and Legend game are really good, and they're like 4-player cooperative, so that's fun too. So that's the good news out of Ubisoft. Now for the bad news out of Ubisoft. Ubisoft has disbanded the Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown team. So
That's insane.
Yeah.
the team that put out Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown at the beginning of this year, like in February, March, sometime early in the year, they have completely disbanded that team, meaning my understanding is they did not fire anyone, but they reassigned everyone in that team to other teams. So that team is no longer together working on any games.
Okay, so it's slightly, because I was like, this is like on par with shutting down the Hi-Fi Rush studio. Well, okay,
Right.
it's slightly better, but it's a very small margin.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. I mean, while maybe not your game of the year, from the way you talked about it, it sounds like it'll definitely be on the list.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll make my top 10, definitely. Like, no doubt. And I'm not alone in that. Like,
Oh,
I've
sure,
yeah.
heard that from lots of people. Yeah, this news pisses me off. Like, this is much like the Hi-Fi Rush news, where you have a team who makes a really good game, and I think this is a better game than Hi-Fi Rush, but I really liked Hi-Fi Rush as well.
Yeah.
You have these teams making these really great games. You suck at marketing the games, and the result is you get rid of this team. And I understand it's a business. I understand at the end of the day you got to make money, but I also see it as this team makes a really fantastic game that is both critically praised and beloved by fans of it. And your response is not to say, okay, well, how can we make a more successful game using you? Because obviously this is a very talented group of people, but instead to be like, all right, well, you didn't make enough money. Let's screw that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's unhealthy for the game industry because these people go to different teams and there's no guarantee that spread out onto different teams, they'll have the same impact as they did together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, okay, maybe you get to work with a handful of the same people again. Maybe, but you're not likely to work with the majority of the team in one place again.
Yeah, and those sort of, that chemistry, those synergies of those people working together are maybe what captures that magic.
Right.
Right. So they have, apparently this decision was made within weeks of launch. So they did not release this game onto Steam until August, September. So before this game ever even came out on Steam, they had already decided to disband this team. Apparently, one of the justifications given to the team was that there was this fear if they made a sequel, it would cannibalize sales of the first game, which sounds insane.
It's not how this works.
There also would take time to make a sequel, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, one assumes they can't just pump out another one in 6 months, right? This isn't Five Nights at Freddy.
Right.
Yeah.
It would take them a couple of years or so, potentially even bumping up into new hardware at that point. The director of publishing at Larian, who made last year's big hit Baldur's Gate 3, has lashed out at Ubisoft. So somebody who has nothing directly to do with this game in particular, but has lashed out Ubisoft saying, quote, the hardest thing is to make an 85 plus game, referring to the Metacritic score. The hardest thing is to make an 85 plus game. It is much, much easier to release one. So he's essentially blaming Ubisoft and their poor marketing and poor release strategy for sinking this game and not the actual game itself or the development team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just looking it up. This game has an 86 on Metacritic,
Wow.
which
It's
is
wild.
really good.
Yeah.
Especially when you think it's a 2D Metroidvania.
Right.
Right? This is not the AAA, Spider-Man 2 type game. This was already a fairly low budget game to produce. I mean, I'm not saying it was super cheap, but they were not spending $200 million to make this game.
Yeah.
They were not spending as much as they spent on Star Wars Outlaws to make this game. And so, yeah, I mean, you get an 86 out of that, and, it's going to be on a lot of people's Game of the Year list. It seems like maybe you screwed up. I feel like this sometimes when really great movies come out and there's zero marketing. They just did this with The Wild Robot. Wild Robot is one of the best films of the year. it's easily the best animated film I've seen this year, and it's one of the best films I've seen all year.
Well, hold on. We saw Garfield this year.
As I said, the best animated film I've seen this year, despite Garfield. And, you know, like that movie, like I think it was 3 weeks after that film came out, it was still number 2 at the box office, and they put it out on digital release where you could like rent or buy it.
Yeah.
Like, in its third weekend, they were already doing that when the movie's still like number 2 at the box office.
Well, that's
it was
that's
beating
wild.
Joker.
Like, I was saying, because I was gonna say that's what they're doing with Joker right now, but Joker is a flop.
Right.
So it's like get it out of theaters, make room for something good, but something that is good.
Which is even crazier because it's a kids movie, and kids movies play forever.
Yeah.
Because parents want to get the kids out of the house, and they take them to the movies, and they say, "What's a kids movie? What's animated up here?"
Yeah.
And they see, you know, the Wild Robot. They don't care what it's about. It's just to get the kids out of the house and entertain them for a couple hours.
And the kids will probably be fine with pretty much anything as well.
Right. And, you know, that's why we saw Garfield, and like there are kids who love Garfield because, you know, kids have no taste.
Dang. Well,
Isn't that a dig at yourself, Justin? Because you love Garfield.
I like Garfield, the character, not this film starring Garfield.
Oh, okay.
This is like how Gollum can be an interesting character, but Gollum the game is a terrible game.
Oh, okay, fair.
Though maybe not as terrible as we all think.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about how long kids' movies will stay at the theaters. I remember I saw Inside Out maybe in like June or something like that. And I went to, when I visited my friends in like September, we went and saw Beetlejuice. Inside Out was still playing, which, and like, that's a Pixar movie. So that one is maybe not like the best justification to think about it, but like 3 months at the theater is kind of unheard of, it feels like.
Yeah, these days, definitely.
I say in
But, I mean,
modern times, yeah.
Wild Robot is DreamWorks, so you know it's kind of up there. It's not the third tier studios.
Sure.
It's not Illumination, like, you know, putting their films out. Though I guess to their defense, they,
You know, people love Minions. I think
it's because those people have not been exposed to rabbits.
Yes.
he's about
That's
to
what it is.
Garfield fans have no taste. Minions fans have no taste.
Am I like? Is anybody going to argue with me? You saw Garfield.
Chopping off potential people listening to this fan, ostracizing any
that's
potential
the
listener.
last straw.
Hey, if I'm costing us fans because they are also Minion fans, I am fine with that.
Wow.
Oh no.
Send your hate mail to justin.young@siu.edu.
bunch of jaundice-looking.
Don't sugarcoat it. Tell us how you really feel.
But yeah, I mean, this is a shame about this studio.
Yeah.
That's right. We were talking about Prince of Persia. Yeah, I mean that's really unfortunate to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, and then it really does make me angry. Like, I don't get angry about a lot of things. This is one of those things where it makes me angry. These people made a fantastic game. You know, in my opinion, one of the best Metroidvanias that's ever been made. And to see this as like kind of the reward, like, you know, we've talked about this before. At some point, you start to go, why do I care?
Yeah.
Why give that 110%? Because obviously, even if like the output is fantastic, we may still get canned over this.
Unless we sell 1 billion copies.
Right, which
Yeah.
nobody should have ever thought that game was going to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Metroid Dread is the best-selling Metroid game of all time, and it sold 3 million copies. Metroidvanias don't sell, 20 million copies.
Yeah.
But you know what? Star Wars Outlaws only sold 1 million copies in its first month. So, like even Star Wars Outlaws is not selling as well as Metroid Dread. All right. So moving on, Masahiro Sakurai the creator of the Smash Brothers games, has said in a new video on his YouTube channel that he started working on a new game in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So Sakurai started working on a new game in 2022. We are probably getting a new Switch in 2025.
Yep.
Do we think this is a new Smash Brothers?
Probably.
I mean, Nintendo has to be working on a new Smash Brothers, right?
You expect Mario Kart and you expect Smash Bros.
I think Ultimate sold something like 40 million copies.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see it being a new Smash Bros. And it's sweet because like he's had this YouTube channel that he's been doing for the past few years, and so he announced this in the final video because he was like, "By the way, like, are you thinking I look older? It's because I recorded all these videos 2.5 years ago. I've been working on a game."
I mean, and those videos are really good. Like,
oh my gosh, they're incredible.
If you're interested in game development, like sort of behind the scenes, it's like actually one of the best resources like ever.
No, it's the same way as like when Peter Jackson made Lord of the Rings and filmed everything behind the scenes, and that's a documentary on how to make a film. Everything on that channel is a documentary on how to make games.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exciting. It's definitely keeping my fingers crossed for interested to see if it is a new Smash Bros. If it's some. The only thing I might say is like it might be something more low key, just because Smash Bros. Ultimate. Sakurai worked himself nearly to death on Ultimate.
Right.
So I could see it being something more low key, like, oh, let me do another Kirby game, or like let me do something.
You're just hoping it's another Kirby.
I mean, I expect a Kirby game regardless of whether Sakurai worked on it or not. But I know how much Ultimate in particular took a toll on his health.
Yeah.
And so part of me is like, part of me hopes it's not him doing, or at least that he's not doing it alone.
Yeah.
Because I don't want him to burn out and demolish his health. But that said, I would love a new Smash Bros. Game.
Well, I think they have to be working on one for the Switch. Too. Like,
yeah, they have to be.
And it has
Ultimate
to be
was
something.
supposed to be the end, but we all knew it wouldn't really be.
Well, and it has to be something they've already started developing at this point, because they want to get that out in the first year or two.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking.
Because that's what they do.
That's going to be one that people buy the system to have the game.
Yes.
Right. So, like, I mean, I feel like Ultimate came out, the second Christmas that the Switch was out?
That sounds right.
So I could see them targeting not, next year, but 2026 for a new Smash.
Yeah.
I also, what do you think a new Smash looks like? Is it just Ultimate with more characters?
I think that's the hard thing is, like, Ultimate feels like it's meant to be like the end all be all of a Smash Brothers. And so it's hard to even imagine
I know it's like
it's not just the same, but more. I mean, obviously, but it's
like we finally got Sora. Like that was the crowning,
and we're done.
That was the crowning moment.
I appreciated that they brought back some like old character, like Banjo-Kazooie, and stuff like that. I also really, really enjoyed playing through the you had
story mode.
Yeah, the story mode.
Right.
I enjoyed it more so than I have on like Smash Bros. In a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely better than 4.
Mm-hmm. Figuring out how the cards or whatever that you have to put in, how that, like on certain levels you have to have certain cards and things like that. Like that was, I don't know, that got me back into it, playing it. Because like Smash Bros, especially like on the Wii and Wii U, it got like, I don't know, it's like weirdly competitive stuff. And so I played it for fun for a little bit and then didn't play much after that. But the story mode in this one, in the Ultimate, brought me back to it.
Yeah, I still think Brawl has the best story mode out of any of them, but the story mode in Ultimate was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good attempt at it, right? Like they haven't had a really good single player mode in that game since Brawl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was actually a pretty good attempt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So maybe that's where they can improve. I mean, obviously it's always going to have, especially now that it gets entered into those like competitive arenas. And like one of the, I've only been in 2 video game tournaments, and one of them was a Smash Bros. Tournament. Like,
Right.
so they're going to keep that element of it, but I think where we're going to see it expand is the single player.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see because I'm certainly very interested in where they go with this. Because I don't know. Same thing with Mario Kart.
Same, yeah.
Like you release 100 tracks, I don't know how you top that.
Yeah.
Like, I suppose you can always make Mario Kart more pretty, like more detailed graphics.
I guess.
That doesn't really benefit Smash as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Netflix has shut down their AAA game studio called Team Blue. Netflix had announced this, I feel like a year or 2 ago. Like it hasn't been that long. And they had hired up this new AAA team that they were going to make, like the equivalent of a $60, $70 game. And they've shut that down. And apparently taking a new strategy, kind of moving away from that, focusing more on these lower budget, smaller games that they've been doing so far. So more layoffs in the game industry, which is always kind of sad to see. Vampire Survivors is finally getting Castlevania DLC. It's called Ode to Castlevania, which, okay, that's what Vampire Survivors has always been. I mean, the characters and the enemies in that game, the items are ripped straight from Castlevania. At times, they look like they literally are the ripped sprites from Castlevania. But this DLC is going to include 20 characters, 40 weapons, and 30 music tracks.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. This seems like a good way to wrap up Vampire Survivors, to take it back where it began, kind of come full circle. This game was always heavily inspired, if not, like I noted, like straight ripped off from Castlevania. So to like end it with this DLC seems really cool to do. And I have not played that game in a while, so like this might actually get me back into playing it.
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing.
Bloober Team claims with Silent Hill 2, the remake, they are finished making, quote, shitty games.
Nice. It's just that easy,
Yeah.
We're done making bad games.
I mean, we were into making bad games before, but now
Yeah.
We were trying to make them.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe how easy it is.
Everything before now, garbage on purpose.
When I read this quote, it reminded me of Domino's when they changed their pizza and they like put out commercials where like, hey, we know like our pizza used to be really disappointing, but now it's good.
Yeah.
And it was like so like, it was so refreshing to have a restaurant just be that blatantly honest.
It's like, we know you only bought us because you're poor. Now you can be poor and like full.
And actually maybe kind of enjoy the pizza. But yeah, like, yes, I do wonder, like, okay, is this actually going to be something good?
Yeah, they'll release, the next game will be shitty and they'll be like, my bad.
You thought we said we were done. We meant we're just getting started.
Yeah.
I mean, we should say Silent Hill 2 is getting good reviews.
Yeah,
People seem to be
I've
happy.
watched a little bit of it. It looks nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the diehard fans there was a diehard fan base there, which were very suspicious of Bloober Team. They seem to be pretty happy with it. So, I mean, yeah, that's good. Good to have something aspirational. Stop making shitty games. Maybe don't start making shitty games. Just start by trying to make good games from the beginning. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is coming to PC in January. That's 15 months after the game was originally released on PlayStation 5. This is the quickest they have ported a game.
Yeah.
So, that used to be over 2 years for a game to come to PC. Now we're down to 15 months. So less than a year and a half. That's
Crazy.
this seems like the future of video games. Like Microsoft is already doing this day and date launches. This seems like Sony is leaning into this more and more of, hey, a year or soon we'll be down to a year.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they may never get to day and date releases, but I feel like they're trying to cut that to less than a year.
Yeah, at least with the major ones. Because
Yeah.
I think Helldivers was the same.
Yeah, that did release on PC at the same time. But that's kind of
That's
a different
secondary,
case.
yeah.
It's also a multiplayer focused game. They
So
did the same
that's-
thing with
I
Concord.
say that's a game that benefits from having as many players at one time as possible.
Right. I think multiplayer focused games, they will continue to release, cross-platform at the same time. Because, you just need that install base to make the game work.
Yeah.
That was the problem for Concord. No, even with that, nobody was playing it.
Yeah.
Let's see. Sony and Amazon, last thing here, Sony and Amazon are rebooting their work on their God of War TV series, bringing in a new writer's room, and apparently starting over pretty much from scratch on that show. They had not started filming. They had just started pre-production previously. So that seems good. It seems like, if you're doing this, it's because you don't think the quality's good enough.
Yeah.
So you're spending the money to try to make this actually a good show.
Which I really want it to be.
If Sony's following in the footsteps of Bloober Team, they're not going to make shitty TV.
I mean, yeah.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
In fairness, that Twisted Metal series was not as terrible as I was expecting it to be. Like, it's not amazing, but like it's a decent watch. But like I think the standard has been raised, right? Like we had the Last of Us show,
Yes.
we had the Fallout show. The expectation, right? You can't produce something like the Halo series anymore.
And I think with God of War, Sony probably feels even more pressure. Like, we have to
'Cause
get
that's
this
one
right.
of it.
We cannot fuck this one up.
Yeah.
That's a crown jewel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right, that does it for news. So let's move on to our big question. And our big question is, what Nintendo franchise would you like to see made into an MMO? Christina, if you could have an MMO of any Nintendo franchise, what would you like?
So my favorite, like one of my favorite games of all time is Banjo-Kazooie. And like the aesthetics of that game, how fun it would be to be a little character from that world. The music alone like makes it good. But along the same lines, I had this thought later as we were talking about poop. Or saying shitty, the Conquer game for that poop boss alone.
I was wondering how you got to that. Like, I had this thought about poop while we were talking.
Listen, we kept saying shitty, and I went, oh, wait, Conquer. It would be fun to battle that poop boss with a lot of different people laughing and making corn jokes. But yeah, that's my answer.
Just want a really gigantic poop that it takes lots of people to beat.
Raid boss.
That's what it is. Like, the boss. Have you seen it? The boss, the poop boss.
Yes.
Yeah. He like throws corn. Okay, it's my turn's over.
Mario, how about you?
While not a franchise, I guess, the game that first came to mind was Switch Sports. They did so much in terms of like world building of Spacco Square, of like, there's a library underneath the tennis courts or something like that. And it's like, but you won't let us go to that thing. Let me go into the shops. Let me walk around this world. I think that would have made that game. I mean, it's already a fun game. That would have made that game even better.
Plus, you then get to like make all the items, all the different sports like merchandise and everything.
Sure.
Like you can imagine, like, hey, work your way up, and here's all the tennis rackets you can buy with different color schemes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that working. Yeah.
And I feel like sports games, especially like a backyard style sports game, would make sense as an MMO of like, the way that I think 2K has a mode like that where you like have like the playground,
the city.
Yeah, you've got the city, and people can kind of just like call next of like the pickup games.
That's
I feel like that would be a very cool way of doing an MMO.
For sure.
It seems a very Nintendo way of like,
Yeah.
embracing play and everything. Though I will say, no poop monster fit.
No poop monster. Well, there's got to be a bathroom, right?
No.
Like, are the porta potties backing up?
Listen. I was a child and it was poo-poo murder.
Alicia.
Oh my gosh. I honestly don't know. Maybe Pikmin. I feel like that would be fun.
Pikmin is a good choice.
Traveling to different planets and everything.
Travel to different planets.
Good answer,
Get to
good
see. They've teased the first Pikmin game. If you get the best ending, you get all the different color onions of like Pikmin that we haven't seen yet. So I'm like, that'd be a fun way to like introduce some of those new Pikmin.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I took a similar thing with outer space travel, and I thought of Star Fox.
That was my second. Yep.
So
That would be cool.
particularly if you take like a dinosaur planet, and so you have like you can land on different planets and explore them, but like then you fly between the different planets.
Yeah.
And you can engage in dogfights with enemy players.
Star Wolf.
Yeah, and Crystal.
Yeah.
So you have those characters. So, and you get to create your own like anthropomorphic animal.
Yeah.
So that would be fun.
That was also in mine. I just.
yeah. I think we all remember what was in yours.
That was never mentioned when you were talking about it.
Okay, fair.
She did mention something about anthropomorphic animals.
Yeah.
I think all of our minds just got washed away.
Or like the opposite of washed away with the poop.
I wasn't gonna go there.
All right. We have to get to a meeting, so thank you. Thank you to Alicia, Christina, and Mario. I'm losing my like train of thought because Christina's over there still laughing at her poop jokes.
Sorry.
So thank you to the three of you. Thank you to our listeners. Obviously, you can always check out more stuff on SalukiGames.com. She is now trying to slowly like shrink away into her seat, which just makes it even more distracting, to be honest. And we do have some news. So 2 weeks from when we're recording this episode, 2 Fridays from now, we will actually be doing Playing for Pets. That's at playingforpets.com. You can also reach it by going to salukigames.com. But that is going to be our 16 hours over 2 days, that Thursday and Friday, live stream to raise money for the local animal shelter, no-kill animal shelter called St. Francis Care, based out of Murfreesboro, Illinois. So we do this event every few years, and it's really a lot of great fun. We'll be streaming that live on the website.
Yeah,
so
the last time we did it was very near the beginning of this podcast, so it'll be
yeah, it was right after we started it. Yeah, so
it'll be fun to bring that back. And
plus, this is our 95th episode, so we are very quickly approaching episode 100. We're not going to reach it before Playing for Pets, but we'll reach it pretty soon after.
Yeah.
We'll have the Game of the Year right after. We have a lot of stuff happening with us coming up, big kind of momentous like occasions. So that's all really exciting. But thank you for listening. Please share this podcast with other people. Go out, play something fun this week. Think about poo monsters, and we will talk to you again soon.